Chapter 10. Welcome Home. Welcome to Flushy HQ. Flushy headquarters, or HQ as it was often referred to, was located in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. It was right where the 10 freeway meets the 110 freeway. This place was like an 8-hour drive from Silicon Valley, but evidently someone forgot to tell the people who worked there. After suffering through an hour of bumper-to-bumper traffic driving down the 405 freeway, I had finally arrived at HQ. This was the first day of the rest of my life. After navigating my way through the massive underground parking structure, I finally made it up to the lobby. The lobby was embossed with white marble, possibly imported from Italy. It covered from the floor all the way up to the ceiling. There was a large hourglass-shaped man waiting around for someone in the lobby. He was wearing the most peculiar outfit, a tuxedo t-shirt and flip-flops. It was a safe bet that he was waiting for me. He was holding a sign in his hands, like a cab driver picking up someone from the airport. I couldn't read it from afar. As I approached, I could see the sign had my last name on it. I found my way through the crowd and walked over to him. "Mike Allen, nice to meet you." I stuck out my hand, expecting to shake hands, but was met with a fist bump instead. "I'm Curtis Little. Nice to meet you, Mike. How auspicious. You're actually on time. Good." It turns out my incessant need to be punctual would finally pay some dividends. We fist bumped and stood there awkwardly as Curtis was checking something on his phone. "Thanks. I'm glad to be on board." Curtis looked at me briefly and then back to his phone. "Welcome to the Flushy Revolution, Mike. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Today everything changes for you." It was a little dramatic, but so far so good, I thought. "Mike, what's that in your hand?" "It's, my briefcase," I said sheepishly as I guarded my battle-hardened leather briefcase. The years of wear and tear had really begun to make a dent. The leather had cracked from seam to seam, which made these large white, almost spiderweb-shaped crevasses. "Vintage, I like it, but ultimately it's unnecessary. You won't need it here. Everything you'll ever need is already on your workstation." "Ah, okay, great." We stood there for another minute or so. I wanted to take it all in and to get a good lay of the land. Curtis, along with the majority of people bustling through the lobby, was completely fixated on his phone. "My wife says my people skills are a lot like my cooking, fast and tasteless. That being said, come this way and follow me. We move fast here and we take no prisoners. Let's walk and talk. I presume you can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time." Without hesitation, I followed him down a long white corridor. It looked more like a duckling following behind its mother back to the nest. Curtis had this hysterical waddle to his walk, which I found rather amusing and fitting. "Today, Mike, today is your training day. It's all pretty exciting. You're the first actual insurance agent to enter our sales team. Prior to you, our sales team has been comprised exclusively of internal Flushy employees. You made history on your first day. How about that?" "Really?" Without explanation, our pace quickened. It was all rather enigmatic. The hallway was crowded. I couldn't get over how many people worked here. It reminded me a lot of picking someone up from the flyaway at the Los Angeles International Airport. Really, we prefer to hire from within." "Curtis, who are all these people?" What do you mean?" He looked at me almost somewhat insulted by the premise of my question. It probably wasn't the best idea to start pissing people off on my first day. I mean, how many employees work here?" About 10,000 at this campus, something like that. I don't really know, to be honest. All I know is that we're growing like athlete's foot, that is to say, fast and all over." We stopped abruptly in the middle of the hallway. People were navigating around us like water flowing around a rock in the river. Curtis had to check his phone, again. He answered it, and we started back on our path like nothing happened. We finally arrived at the entrance of the sales floor. Curtis grabbed his key card and stood up against a doorway for a second. His phone kept buzzing in his hand as he was juggling his keys. "You're going to need to get one of these eventually." He dangled his keycard in front of my face and swiped it across the keycard reader. For right now, let's just get you to your workstation and set up a learning terminal. Then we can worry about the logistics. We don't want to open the kimono just yet." Open the kimono? What kind of bizarre metaphor to use in a workplace? I mean, who talks like that? I wasn't the easiest person in the world to offend, but still. Corporate culture was going to be a fun learning experience. "Gotcha." Curtis opened the door and escorted me over to an empty desk. He turned on the computer and hit a bunch of keys. I was still a little awestruck by the entire setup. The desk had 3 LED monitors, a wireless mouse, and a backlit chiclet-style keyboard. You know the kind that makes a loud click every time you hit a key. Your initial training workload will consist of several tranches of interrelated deliverables. In other words, today you'll spend the day watching Flushy TV. Flushy TV is our training repository, where we house all of our proprietary corporate training modules. We've developed a completely artificially intelligent-based training module. Pretty cool, huh? Curtis had this weird sideways grin, like a used car salesman about to close a deal. If this was any indication of the sales culture, I could tell that I was in for some turbulence. "Very cool indeed." "Lost for words? I thought you were a sales puke. Don't worry, no one is expecting you to touch the iceberg on your first day." Curtis went back to typing on the computer. I peeked over his shoulder to get a better idea of what he was doing. I think he caught me in the corner of his eye because he moved over a bit to obstruct my view. "Okay, and you're all set up in the system. From here you'll just complete the modules and then we're off to the races." Curtis slid the keyboard on over to me and sprung up from his hunched-over position. "Thanks. What do I do if I have a question?" "The computer will answer all of your initial questions. Mike, it's important that you trust the process. For expectation purposes, we can set a baseline for our initial cadence as you establish more bandwidth post-training. Don't overthink things on your first day. No one is expecting you to boil the ocean." "Okay, what if I need help?" "Mike, lean into the process. Don't fight the process." "Gotcha. One more question." Curtis stared at me with this annoyed look on his face. Apparently, a couple of additional questions was a massive time drain for him. "Yeah, what is it?" "Do I get an employee handbook or—" "Mike, more to come on that. Stay tuned." More to come? What in the world does that mean? His leadership style was riddled with secrecy and the allure of mystery. To be honest, I didn't hate it all that much. It left a lot of room for me to be my own boss. "Uh-huh." "Mike, let me ask you something." "Go for it." "Are you a team player?" I was a little taken aback by the tone of his question. I mean, I've been working here for 10 minutes, and this guy is asking me if I'm a team player? "Yes." "Yes? Yes what?" Is this guy for real? Does he want me to spell it out like some kind of child? I was new, so I figured my best bet was to just acquiesce to his request. "Yes, Curtis, I'm a team player." "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Look, if you get into trouble, you're surrounded by people who went through the exact same training. Just ask one of them for help. It's not like you're conjoined at the hip to this chair. Get up and get around a little bit. When in doubt, ask one of your peers." "Gotcha. Will do. Affirmative." Before I could utter another word, Curtis looked at his watch and jolted out of the seat. Curtis seemed like a pleasant enough individual, but his personality was camouflaged by his perennial high-strung appearance. Working here at Flushy clearly took a heavy toll on Curtis. I guess his management style was to outsource managing to the people he managed. What a unique change of pace. "You're on your own until lunchtime. I'll be back around noon, more or less. I gotta run. Good luck," Curtis said as he bolted for the door. I sat down, pushed my briefcase aside, and started up the computer module. Curtis didn't have much of a bedside manner or training acumen, but how hard could it be? What was a computer module going to teach me about selling? I guess I was about to find out. The sales floor was quiet, like a mortuary before the start of a funeral procession. I mean, you could hear a pin drop from a mile away. Occasionally I would hear a flurry of keyboard strokes. But other than that, it was dead quiet. For a room the size of a moderately sized grocery store, I figured there would be a flurry of commotion. I guess I figured wrong. There was a pair of headphones on my desk. I plugged them in and went to town on that training module. The video started with a terse standard corporate disclaimer, the typical legalese disclaimer that universally preceded all corporate training videos. A cartoon character popped up on the screen and started yammering on about Flushy. Welcome to Flushy. Welcome to the company that is single-handedly spearheading the complete transformation of the life insurance industry. I took in a deep breath and an even deeper sigh of relief. I could tell this was going to be a protracted battle between my attention span and this learning module. As part of our sales team, you are on the front lines of the customer experience. When people think Flushy, they will think of you. I paused the module for a second, took a deep breath, and then hit the play button. Even though you are part of the Flushy sales team, it's important for you to remember that Flushy is not an insurance company. That was a rather startling proclamation. Not an insurance company? That was just the kind of contrivance that I needed to captivate my attention. I'm sure that statement works on the typical straight-out-of-college, run-of-the-mill Flushy employee. But I wasn't quite ready for Flushy to pull the wool over my eyes just yet. Flushy is really more of a data company, more of a tech company rather than an insurance company. Flushy leverages best-in-class tech to help revolutionize the customer purchasing experience. This in turn allows us to save money and give that savings back to the customer, the way it should be. The way it should be. Right. So I sell insurance, but we aren't an insurance company? I chuckled a bit and went back to work. We do things differently here at Flushy. Your job isn't merely just to sell insurance. It's to live into the Flushy way of doing things. It's to align yourself with the Flushy core competency value matrix. It's to be a part of the revolution. Everything we do here, by extension everything that you do here at Flushy, is very intentional, cultivated, and deliberate. All in order to help us revamp an archaic industry that teeters on the brink of disaster. I paused the video again and ran my hand through my hair. What in the world did I just sign up for? I didn't realize it, but I started tapping my feet in some kind of nervous anticipation. Tap, tap, tap. I was determined to make this work, and more importantly, keep a positive mental attitude. After a momentary lapse, I started the video back up and tried to immerse myself in the content. I took another deep breath and reminded myself to focus on the journey. Being part of a data company doesn't mean that we are not a people company. We realize the importance of a strong work-life balance. That is why we encourage each employee to take an occasional weekend off from work. Sorry, what now? Take only an occasional weekend off from work? That can't be right. There's no way. I shrugged off the commentary, but I knew better than that. A company this meticulous doesn't make mistakes like that. Every word on this screen was highly calculated. From start to finish, the script was probably double or even triple checked. As a Flushy team member, we want to help you prioritize all of the things that will make you successful here at Flushy. When our team members are successful, Flushy is successful. For example, we love to measure the productivity of our team members. A productive team member is a happy team member. I paused the video again and slowly removed my headphones. I subtly and delicately placed them on my desk in front of me. After a nice deep breath, I composed myself. I got up and pretended to stretch, but in reality I was scoping out the nearest escape route. I found an exit in the back corner of the sales floor that seemed to be relatively inviting. I procured my briefcase and pushed in my chair toward the desk. I slowly walked towards the exit, inching closer and closer. As I was walking, I felt the sudden need to look back at my desk. Just a quick, inconspicuous glance back, like someone who just fled a crime scene. As soon as I did, I slammed into one of my coworkers. "Whoa, watch yourself there, bud." "Sorry about that.
You were what? From the looks of it, it almost looked like a prison escape. What, were you making a run for it?"
No, I was doing exactly that." We both laughed for a second at the absurdity of it all. I mean, I was caught with my hand in the cookie jar. What could I do but laugh?
"Name is Dean, and you are?"
"Nice to meet you, Dean. I'm Mike Allen."
"Ah, yes, Mike Allen. I've heard of you. You're the boss's shiny new toy."
Dean had an inquisitive tone, like a detective trailing off in mid-thought, talking about a theory. Dean struck me as the kind of person who valued being well-informed about office gossip. "You people don't seem to waste any time. I take it that the rumor mill churns quick around here."
"Indeed it does. Well, before you run off, let me grab you a cup of coffee. That way you can at the very least say you got something out of showing up to work today. How about it, Mike Allen?"
Dean was baiting me. In reality, he was chomping at the bit to blabber how the new guy was about to jump ship on the first day. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I just needed to reset, and a concentrated dose of caffeine was just what the doctor ordered. That sounds good. Lead the way."
"All right. Follow me on back this way, Mike."
We walked to the back corner of the sales floor. There was an entire commercial kitchen attached to the sales floor. It was like one of those kitchens you'd see on a cooking channel. I was blown away by the welcoming and lavish setup. The grandeur of it all was rather intoxicating. The sales floor had an open concept and huge 20-foot ceilings. There were assorted fresh fruits, an endless array of snacks, desserts, and even a freaking cappuccino machine. Dean stopped dead in his tracks, looked over at me, and pointed at the various coffee makers.
"Here you go,"
Dean said as he handed me a complimentary Flushy branded mug. I took a second to examine the mug. I grabbed the coffee from Dean and took an interminable sip out of that porcelain mug. The mug was embossed with this pearl white color to it.
"Mike, why are you here?"
To get some coffee?" Dean grinned at my spontaneous response. He started to laugh as he poured us some coffee. I take it he found my complete lack of self-awareness humorous.
"I meant, why are you here at Flushy?"
I want to be part of the revolution," I said as I buried my face back into my coffee mug. The coffee was a lot like the conversation, that is to say, hot and bitter. Dean looked at me as I drank and started snickering under his breath.
"Didn't your mother ever tell you that it's rude to answer a question with a question? No, seriously, why are you here?"
He asked me again with a little more authority veiled behind his question. His tone became more affirmative as the conversation went on, and his pacing noticeably dampened. "I lost a sale, and—"
"You lost a sale. And what? And you thought the grass was greener on this side of the fence? So what? You thought if you can't beat 'em, you might as well join them? Am I right?"
"Well, yeah, basically, that's right."
"I don't blame you. It's all
so great working here at Flushy," Dean said, and then proceeded to take a big gulp of his coffee. Dean had poured a generous amount of creamer into his mug. So much, in fact, that the color of the coffee in his mug was almost indistinguishable from the color of the mug itself.
"Mike, being part of the revolution, that is so great. Assuming you go back to your workstation and don't decide to rage quit, I'll be 2 cubicles over from you. Feel free to ping me with any questions that pop up, and if not, that's cool too."
Dean explained and started walking back to his cubicle. Dean journeyed back to his desk and stirred up some casual chit-chat with some of the other salespeople along his way back. What have I gotten myself into? I decided to grab a seat in one of the many beanbag chairs lying around the sales floor. I scanned the room to get a better lay of the land. Really, I just wanted a comfortable spot to finish my coffee.
The coffee here was incredible, nothing like my old work. Just the ordinary tech company vibe, you know, ping-pong tables and goofy furniture scattered about. After my nerves had settled a bit, I went back to my desk and sat down. I made a commitment to myself to see this through to the end. The way I figured it, every job ends one way or the other. Either you quit, you die, you get fired, your company goes bankrupt, or you get downsized. Focus on the journey. See it through until the end, Mike. See it through until the end, I murmured to myself. Initially, I was a little roused by all of the data tech speak, but managed to wander back to my desk. Like most human beings, I'm not a big fan of being micromanaged. As a salesperson, I wasn't used to the idea of being micromanaged. I was used to the idea of getting people results. This seemed like just the environment I wanted to be in. I turned on my computer and started the module back up. Nice to have you back, Mike Allen. Well, that's just a tad bit creepy. Is this AI? Does the computer actually recognize me, or is this some elaborate training module? Here at Flushy, we measure everything, and we mean everything. Because if it can't be measured, then it doesn't matter. If it can be measured, then we can turn that into useful data. I'm sure you have a lot of questions at this point. Whenever you are uncertain about something, we want you to find creative solutions. Just go ahead and ask yourself this simple question. What does good look like? What does good look like? What kind of preposterous question is that? What does that even mean? What an asinine thing to ask! I was starting to get the feeling that this was among one of the many pending useless business cliches that engendered the modern corporate vernacular. A great salesperson is a salesperson who takes great notes. A great salesperson is then measured based on notation, timeliness, and other critical success factors. A great salesperson sticks to the script. A great salesperson does everything by the book. For quality assurance, we monitor for strict compliance to company best practices. I had to pause the video again. This was dry, I mean brutally dry content, even for a learning module. At the very least, it was on a video. I couldn't imagine having to read this nonsense in some kind of book or training manual. I put my hands together and cracked my knuckles. Crack! The noise echoed across the entire sales floor. There was an eerie quietness to it all, like a library on the weekend. I clicked the video back on. We base the predominant amount of your success around industry-leading key performance indicators. For instance, we measure you on how fast you respond to a customer quote request. This is one of our best indicators of sales success. We also monitor how well you document each of your sales conversations. A well-documented conversation is a successful conversation. Even though every one of your interactions is recorded, for posterity we find it important for you to document each of your sales calls. Wait. So each call is recorded and automatically documented. But I have to manually enter in call notes on top of that? For a tech company, that seems like a rather redundant and useless exercise. Knock, knock, knock! I almost jumped out of my chair after being awakened to that thunderous knock. It was Dean standing next to my cubicle. "How's it going, Mike?" "It's going." "Yeah, because 5 minutes ago you were thinking about jumping ship." Dean clutched onto his coffee mug and took an audible gulp of coffee. I took it that he tended to do that as a way of demonstrating his self-appointed superiority. It was probably something he gleaned from one of those old cheesy late 80s sales movies. He was almost a caricature of a prototypical sales bro. "Dean, are they serious about all this?" "Serious? About all what, Mike?" Dean was leaning up against my cubicle, drinking his coffee, cool as a cucumber. Just another day for him on the sales floor, you know, not making sales. What was this guy, hourly? "Well, we're salespeople, right?" "Yeah, what do you mean by that?" he replied slowly and with discretion. I gauged by his response that he was slightly confused by my inquisition.
That was turning out to be a common theme with this company. I felt like the caveman who discovered the wheel trying to explain to another caveman why the wheel was so great. It seems from the training that we're measured on a lot of things that have absolutely nothing at all to do with sales. For instance? Well, it looks like we get measured on how fast we notate a sales conversation. What's up with that? Dean drank some of his coffee and pondered my question. I was getting the feeling that I was testing waters with Dean's tolerance for griping. The way I looked at it, griping was a way of life. I mean, a good gripe was the fuel that promulgated most of my working life. Tell me more. Tell me more was the proverbial punt the football of the business industry. I was starting to pick up on the jargon, but I still had to read between the lines. What does that have to do with sales? Shouldn't we get measured on actual sales? Ah, you're one of those people, I take it. Look, here's the thing. This is the way we do things here at Flushy. If you can't handle it, then go work somewhere else. People would kill to have a chance to work at Flushy. People would die for the opportunity to work here. That wasn't the most inspirational of answers, and needless to say, I was dumbstruck by his retort. Go work somewhere else? I was starting to piece together that the Flushy culture did not reward independent thought. In fact, they probably discouraged it. Well, I'm curious, that's all. Mike, if you can't handle it, maybe you should start refreshing your resume. I scoffed at his response. It was more like a snarl, really. What kind of answer was that? Who talks like that? What, I can't be curious about something? Weren't you the least bit curious? The only thing you should be curious about is the pending IPO and how much your stock options are going to be worth when we go public. So you're not curious why we track all these non-sales metrics? As a salesperson, that doesn't interest you at all? Not at all, not in the least. I do my job, and I do my job well. Dean put his coffee mug down on my desk and folded his arms across his chest. I was trying his patience to the point where I was riding the line of good taste and being a complete annoyance. The way I looked at it, I wasn't the one who strolled over to his desk to stir up random conversation. Let me ask you something, Mike. Do you like money? What? Do you like money? It's not a complicated question. I mean, it's not the most important thing in my life. Dean smiled and picked his coffee mug back up from my desk. It left a large circular stain on my desk. Coffee rings were the battle scars of the insurance industry. If you didn't have a coffee stain on your desk, you weren't much of an insurance salesman in my book. Well, Mike, to me, money isn't everything in life. It's the only thing in life. Uh-huh. Mike, that makes me think. Where's your manager at? Curtis? Yeah, that guy is like the Heisman Trophy winner for The Office. What? Anytime someone has a question, he stiff-arms them and runs for the nearest exit. Don't believe me? Next time you have a question and don't come complaining to me, try asking him something. I guarantee you, the next words out of his mouth will be, more to come, or stay tuned, or tell me more. I stopped laughing, because that all seemed to track from what I knew about Curtis. Albeit my experience was rather limited, it seemed to be consistent with what I knew of him so far. Okay, fair enough. Just remember this, Mike. If you want to be successful here at Flushy, you need to be the CEO of your workstation. Be the CEO of your desk space. I mean, you're a team player, right? Knock, knock, knock. Dean daintily knocked a couple of times on the side of my cubicle with his middle finger and began to walk away. All I could do is shake my head and get back to work. I put my headphones back on and went back to the indoctrination process. To my begrudging dismay, the video went back on. What we found is that all these behaviors drive positive sales results. We measure everything here at Flushy because we are a data company. If it can't be measured, it can't be objective. In my head, I knew this was all just part of the process.
I mean, heck, it was only my second real job. I'm sure all big companies are like this. I spent the next 10 minutes or so just spacing out at my desk. Before I knew it, it was time for lunch. An instant message popped up on my computer monitor. It was from Curtis. TTT? Question mark. I tried to reason out what that meant in my head. TTT. T. What the heck does that mean? Curtis impatiently replied back in bold font. Time to talk? Clearly, I had to up my 3-letter acronym game. When it came to acronyms, people didn't seem to mess around at this company. Sure thing. It wasn't like I had anything better to do. I mean, aside from eating my lunch alone in the cafeteria. Great, turn around. I'm at the espresso machine in the break room. I turned around and looked over towards the break room area. There he was, standing around fiddling with the espresso machine. I took my headphones off, stood up, and started walking over to the break room. As I approached the break room, Curtis turned around and we did that awkward, half-raised hand kind of hello that people do. Mike, how's it hanging? I think I'm starting to get used to everything. I'm excited to get going. Glad to hear it. I know how it is the first day. It takes a toll on the best of us. I couldn't tell if he was being sincere or not. I wasn't able to get a good read on him. That was just the kind of guy Curtis was. He was an enigma wrapped in a spinach-flavored burrito covering. What I hadn't quite figured out was whether or not he was one of those corporate stooges. You know, the kind that just walked around placating people for the sake of placating. What did you want to talk about? Let's do a working lunch. How's sushi sound? Well, that all depends. Depends on? You paying? I was half joking, but not really. Sushi was a little rich for my blood, and I just started a new gig. Curtis didn't seem to mind my tamped-down attempts at humor. It's on the house, whatever you want. It's one of the best parts of working for Flushy. David and Todd really spare no expense when it comes to employee happiness. Sounds good to me. Walk and talk, Mike. Walk and talk. I mean, you can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, right? Sure can. We started walking, to where I had no idea. We exited the sales floor and headed down a seemingly endless hallway. We embarked down a staircase, up a staircase, through one corridor, and out another. Mike, don't take this the wrong way, but you strike me as a belt and suspenders kind of guy. Thanks? As we started walking, I noticed Curtis had started playing around on his phone. The hallways of Flushy were bustling with people, almost bursting at the seams. It was a madhouse, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry to get somewhere. Curtis walked, and I followed for another 5 minutes or so. We took a left, a right, and 2 more lefts to an open elevator. We stepped in and headed up to the cafeteria. As the elevator doors began to shut, I looked over at Curtis, and he was still preoccupied with his cell phone. The doors shut, and I started scanning around the elevator, hoping to drum up some small talk. Not a single person wasn't staring down at their mobile device. I was intrigued by the synchronicity of it all. What could they be all looking at? What was so captivating? Before I knew it, we arrived at the cafeteria level. There was a loud ding, which was accompanied by a female voice over the loudspeaker. You have arrived at the cafeteria. Please enjoy your lunch, the voice announced in a soft-spoken tone. Curtis put down his phone, and right as the doors opened, everyone piled out of the elevator. Come on, Mike. As we exited the elevator, I stopped for a second to take it all in. The cafeteria was a smorgasbord of different cultural delights. It was like the United Nations of food cafeterias. Curtis put his hand on my shoulder in a seemingly friendly manner. Welcome. Welcome to Flushy. Welcome to the good life. Glad to be here. Let's go and eat. Avanti. Curtis started walking and I started following again. We vigorously started navigating our way over to the sushi restaurant. We grabbed a seat at the sushi bar and both took a sigh of relief. Apparently, we both needed to catch up on our cardio. Curtis yelled out to the sushi chefs, Hiroshi!
The sushi chefs all greeted Curtis in kind, and a bellowing chorus of greetings rang out around the restaurant. I surmised this was a regular outing for Curtis. I was half expecting to be eating a bologna sandwich out of a brown paper bag this morning, and somehow I'm about to get treated to sushi. He was right. This was the good life. "Been here before, huh?" "Oh yeah, this is the best sushi you will ever eat. I'd bet my life on it. Heck, I'd bet your life on it too, for that matter. For whatever that's worth these days, I don't know. You work somewhere for so long, pour your life into something, and for what? What was it all for?" Curtis started this incoherent, incomprehensible rambling. Honestly, I didn't pay much attention to it. I was enamored by my surroundings. All I could eat sushi for free? I couldn't help but let curiosity get the better of me, though. "Can I ask you something?" "Mike, you can ask me anything. However, I do reserve the right to not answer, depending on the question, of course." "Of course, thanks. It's just that. Curtis, how are we able to afford all this?" I didn't see much need for beating around the bush. The shortest distance between two objects is always a straight line, so why not just get to the point? Curtis was completely unfazed by my question. "Mike, it's free, remember? It's part of the benefits package. Didn't you read that thing?" "No, I didn't. What I meant was, how can Flushy afford all of this?" "Ha! You're kidding me, right?" I put my hands up and bashfully conceded my point. "You've worked here for a whole 15 seconds, and that is the kind of question you have for me? However David and Todd are doing it, they are doing it, and making globs of money. I was just curious, that's all. Look, Mike, you don't want to know. However we're doing it, we're making money hand over fist. Trust me, you're better off not poking the beehive. Don't bite the hand that feeds you." "You're not a little curious about how we do it?" "Not at all. The only thing I'm curious about is what kind of sushi roll I want to eat with my sake." Curtis didn't instill a considerable amount of confidence in me with his answer. He grabbed a set of chopsticks and began anxiously investigating the menu. I thought it best to drop the subject for now. Was it all rather lavish? Was it all looking too good to be true? Probably, but why should I care? I kept reminding myself to focus on the journey and stop overanalyzing every little thing. Curtis motioned over to the waitress, held up 2 fingers, and yelled, "Sake, give me 2, please." The waitress pleasantly approached us to shore up his demand. "Sake? Warm or cold sake?" the waitress asked in a polite tone. She probably found that being polite to someone as brutish as Curtis would disarm him from using any colorful commentary. In sales, language is everything. How you say something often matters much more than what you actually say to the person. "Give it to me warm." The waitress acknowledged his order with a polite bow and headed back to retrieve our order. "Mike, what do you figure my job is here? What is it that you think I do? Aside from eating sushi and drinking sake all day?" "Well, obviously that is a big part of my job, but what do you figure my purpose is? Why do you think Flushy pays me the big bucks?" "Curtis, I honestly have no clue." "Clearly. You've got clueless written all over your forehead." "Well then, why don't you educate me?" "Don't mind if I do. My job is to help you be successful here at Flushy. I'll introduce you to the right people, help you navigate through the office politics, and along the way I'll probably have to bail you out of tough situations." The waitress dropped off our sake, and Curtis handed her the filled-out order sheet. Curtis happily grabbed the sake from her, like an actor latching onto an award. "Cheers, Mike. Drink up. This is the beginning of the rest of your life." "Tough situations?" I asked, and then downed the sake. The sake went down about as smooth as some old coffee syrup. Curtis started playing with the brim of his shot glass. He was methodically spinning the glass on the countertop, making these figure-8 counterclockwise motions like a figure skater or something. "Forget I said that.
What I meant to say was that sometimes people make mistakes, and if you do, I'll be the one that has to bail you out of trouble. You don't want the brass breathing down your neck here. Trust me, kid, fly under the radar." We awkwardly stared at each other for another minute or so. His pupils started to dilate. The sake was starting to have some effect. "What kind of trouble? I'm not following." What in the world was this guy talking about? I mean, this was insurance, not the Department of Defense. "What did I just say? Forget I said that. Let's just put it this way. You don't want to find out. You don't got to worry about it." "Okay. Hey, you mentioned David and Todd earlier. David seems to be the face of the company. I haven't heard a peep out of Todd so far. What's up with that?" "There you go with the questions again. What's up with that? Why? You writing a book or something? Are you a biographer or what?" I'm just curious." "Nobody is paying you to be curious." I shook my head silently, holding on to hope for some basic answers. Todd is on an extended vacation in Europe. Forget about that. Let's eat, man." "Sounds good to me." After a few minutes of pigging out on sushi, he jump-started up the discussion in typical Curtis fashion. "Mike, I fancy myself a pretty good judge of character. I can read people like a book, cover to cover, baby." "Ah, so what's your read on me?" "Well, since you asked." Curtis smiled and downed his sake. He slammed the sake on the table and put his hands up. He was forming a picture frame with his hands and looked deep into my soul. "You are clearly a very passionate person and surprisingly intelligent. You aced the interview, and the big man upstairs said you were somewhat of a rising star to be on the lookout for. With that intelligence, you'll often find yourself stepping in it. It's part of your bombastic nature. That's all pretty obvious by how you carry on a conversation." "Go on." This guy read me like a book. I was impressed, but that might have just been the sake talking. I found it comical how every salesperson thinks they are the modern-day Sherlock Holmes. If I had a dime for every time a salesperson thought they could read someone like a book, I'd be a rich man by now. "Was I spot on, or what?" "I mean, yeah, spot on." Curtis nodded his head to the side. He was thoroughly impressed with himself. In all fairness to Curtis, he had enraptured my attention with his showmanship. "I'm curious how many other tricks you have up your sleeve. Now that you've told me what you know, tell me what you don't know." What I don't know yet, is that being a former sales bro, no offense, none taken, I don't know if you can cut it in a tech firm. This is a data company, not an insurance company. Can't cut it? Being a former insurance agent, being self-employed, I don't yet know if you can play well with others. That's what I'm here to figure out. Anyone can fake it till they make it and get a foot in the door. Lasting at this place is the challenge. He motioned over to the waitress and blurted out his order, and started making all sorts of lazily put-together hand gestures. "More sake! Let's keep this party going!" The waitress scurried on over and refilled our shot glasses with a bottle of warm sake. I can't remember the last time I drank this much during a business luncheon. "The thing is, Mike, being part of Flushy isn't like going out and slinging life policies at some networking event over in the San Fernando Valley." Curtis took a second to down his sake. To Curtis, sake was like manna from heaven. "You are now part of the resistance. You're now part of the revolution. You are now part of something much bigger than you, bigger than me, and bigger than anyone in this room. We're all just cogs in the wheel, replaceable, interchangeable, expendable." Curtis doted off for a second. He was lost again in his shot glass, swiveling the glass in a hypnotic circular motion on the countertop. He was mesmerized by something stirring around in his head. Are you going to drink that? Curtis asked as he pointed to my sake glass. I was pawing it, and he clearly noticed or had an obvious drinking problem. I couldn't tell which. Curtis was the king of non sequiturs. I thought my attention span was bad. Maybe I found my doppelganger. I'm pacing myself. Do you mind if I have it? Sure, no problem, I said as I handed over the shot glass. Curtis quickly downed the shot glass and slammed it on the table. Bottoms up! We drank and ate and drank and ate and repeated that cycle for about an hour or so. We finally hit rock bottom and called it quits. Theoretically, we both had to get back to work at some point. Curtis unfolded his napkin and wiped his mouth from ear to ear. He placed the napkin neatly on the sushi bar and looked over at me. What kind of questions do you have at this point in the game? What's it like working at Flushy? Ah, oh yeah, now that's a question. Well, working at Flushy, it's... Curtis rang out a thundering burp. The other patrons started staring at us and chuckled. Pardon me. Nothing cuts the tension from an awkward moment than a random change in topic. Curtis's face rapidly reddened like a ripe Roma tomato. What's it like working at Flushy? It's all just so amazing. Being part of the revolution. Being somebody... Well, I guess the other questions I have are more process-related in nature. Such as? Well, what are my hours? We expect that you have a healthy work-life balance. That being said, typically, we don't expect new associates to work more than 16 hours a day. Curtis started staring down his empty shot glass without so much as an accidental glance over at me. Clearly, he was conflicted with some serious inner turmoil. We want you to have a life outside of Flushy. We want you to have life. Have a life, I mean. What about working weekends? I heard something about that earlier. Well, that depends all on you. How so? It depends on you. Some people can make their quota by just working weekdays, and some find it easier to work a few weekends a month. Uh-huh. Inside, I was terrified. What did I just sign up for? 6 glasses of sake and my poker face had completely disintegrated. Don't worry about it. The only thing you should be worried about is how much money you want to make. Do you know why people come to work for Flushy? What was the politically correct answer? I think politically correct was a few bottles of sake ago. The best I could muster is a standard company line. To be part of the revolution? Curtis tilted his head in astonishment. He was pleased that I was toting the company line this early in the game. You're a quick learner. I think you'll do just fine. The truth was, he saw right through me. I was full of it and a bit tipsy. Ultimately, who cared, though? People work at Flushy for 2 reasons, and 2 reasons only. Curtis had started to waver a bit. He stuck his hand in my face and made a big peace sign. 2 reasons. He noticeably started to slur his words together. He paused for a second to regain his composure. First and foremost, people work here to be part of the revolution. People also work here to become exceedingly wealthy. Wealthy? Really? I like the sound of that. I'm talking accountants for your accountants kind of money. The kind of money that changes people. The kind of money... I tilted my head back for a second in disbelief, but then realized we just ate like a $500 lunch, which was completely free of charge. We pay better than any other insurance carrier. is part of our employee retention strategy and our recruitment strategy. See, we steal the best talent from the industry and have them come work for us. We have a salary match guarantee. If another company makes you an offer, we up it by 10% for IT and 25% for executives. How? How what? How in the world are we able to do that? Mike, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. We had a long, awkward pause and both kind of shook our heads. Talk about an uncomfortable changeover. Well, it's about time to get back to work. Sounds good. Curtis stumbled out of his chair and barely managed to get to his feet. He brushed off his lap and started patting down his legs in an attempt to compose himself. Remember, we're not paying you to think, Mike. We're paying you to make sales. So, go get to it. Go make some sales. Sell more Flushy. Sell more Flushy? The lazy battle cry of a do-nothing manager. Curtis stuck out his fist and we bumped fists. It was time to get back to work, so we both went our respective ways.